Chapter 4. At about 5 o'clock, Smith went home, having spent every penny he had, except 3 shillings he'd screwed out of Mr. Jones, on meat pie, ale, and tobacco. And though there'd been pickpockets in plenty for the picking, he'd kept his hands to himself. For the first time, he could remember he was frightened of being caught, for then he'd lose whatever might be the benefit of the document, which was still pressed against his chest, where it was growing strong with sweat. "Hullo, Smith, not nubbed yet?" Deep in thought, he ignored the landlord's pleasantry and made for the cellar steps. From the below, the tallows gleamed yellowly and cast strange shadows on the wall. He began to descend when, "Stand and deliver!" a voice like 12 o'clock of St. Paul's roared from the heart of the cellar. Smith started, missed a step, and came down the rest anyway, but on his feet. A dangerous, glittering, murdering adventurer of a gentleman in green stood before him, aiming a pistol the scope of a cannon directly at his head. It was his friend, Lord Tom, the High Toby, come on a sociable visit. Do watch how you go, smut," cried Miss Fanny, "or you'll be coming down the steps stone dead, and then where will our document be?" "Did you see that degrading Mr. Jones?" asked Miss Bridget. "For if you didn't, you can go straight out again, broken pate or nothing." "Pleased to see you, Lord Tom," said Smith, picking himself up and rubbing his head. "They told me you was nubbed, but I never believed 'em." "Ah," said the highwayman, putting up his pistol and smiling sadly through his brackenish beard. "It happens to all of us, sooner or later, smut. With some, it's sooner, but with Lord Tom, let's hope it'll be vastly the later." "And so say all of us," murmured Miss Fanny, as she might have said, "Amen." "Trade has been good these past 10 days, Lord Tom?" asked Smith, giving over the 3 shillings to Miss Bridget, who hid them somewhere behind the curtain, away from the highwayman's quick green eyes. "Been on the Finchley Common, smut, me young friend. Wild and free on the snaffling lay." "Don't use them coarse expressions," came Miss Bridget's voice. "If you mean pilfering from unarmed travellers, then say so, or are you ashamed?" Lord Tom grinned at Smith, who grinned back, and then at Miss Fanny, who sighed and blushed. Lord Tom grinned at Smith, who grinned back, and then at Miss Fanny, who sighed and blushed. "Many coaches, Lord Tom? And was there danger?" "Fine smart equipages, little smut. Windows fair, sparkling with satin and brilliance. Like travelling stars, I tell you, gleaming in the foggy nights. It's a life, my boy. Stand and deliver. Stern with the gentry, courteous with the ladies. Madam, your necklace, if you please. Sir, your purse, or I'll blow your head off." "And did you, Lord Tom?" asked Smith, smiling wistfully at the thought of riding out with his friend, which had always been one of his dearest dreams. "Did you blow any heads off this time?" "Only a pair of coachmen, smut, and then unwillingly, for they went for their weapons." "How many coaches did you take?" "6, me friend, 6 gay glitterers." "Then where's your profit, you ugly murderer?" came Miss Bridget's voice, for she'd refused to come out and join the company. "Where's the necklaces and purses, sir?" Lord Tom sighed. "Spent, Miss Bridget, as well you know. That's the way of our lives. Risk all for the chase, then spend the profit in high contempt. And the chase and the dangers all." "Here," Smith nodded vigorously. "There was a diamond brooch I parted with for an evening's ale in Highgate, ma'am, and by God it was a good exchange. Eat, drink, and be merry, as they say, for tomorrow we'll all be nubbed." "A pity it wasn't yesterday," snapped Miss Bridget, and for the first time the highwayman looked angry. But it passed, and he went on with his adventures, to Miss Fanny's admiration and Smith's envy and delight. "But what's this I hear?" he said at length, and with his hands on his hips, high-booted legs apart, surveyed Smith with an amiable smile. "For the news I hear," he nodded affectionately to Miss Fanny, "is that you've come upon a rare treasure, me lad. Already me rival in accomplishment." "Well, indeed, I'm proud of you. A document, I hear, and curiously valuable from all accounts." "I told Lord Tom," put in Miss Fanny, stopping her sewing with her needle at full stretch, "and we're of an opinion that—" "'Tis nothing of value," said Miss Bridget. coming at last through the curtain, her handsome face much flushed. "A property deed, most likely, of no use to anyone at all. And I say it's a confession, Brid." "Really, Lord Tom? Dear, I'm convinced." "Indeed, the more I think on it, it had such a guilty look." "Well, then," exclaimed Lord Tom cheerfully, "let's put an end to the conjecture and see it. Here, Smut, old comrade in arms, let's see the document. Lord Tom will read it for you." Smith, suddenly uneasy, stared at his two sisters, one frowning and the other softly open-mouthed. Then he looked up at his friend, the glittering, dangerous highwayman. He hesitated and began to back towards the stairs. Now that his secret was about to be revealed, he felt unsure, even unwilling. For a whole day the document had been next to his heart. He felt strangely that he'd be betraying it if he gave it up now. He continued to look suspiciously from one to another of the company. "Well, Smut, friend, where's the treasure?" I ain't got it, Lord Tom. I left it with a friend." "Not that creeping Mr. Palmer!" exclaimed Miss Bridget. "How I hate debtors. They're worse than thieves." Smith shook his head and rubbed his nose ruefully. "Then who's got it, Smut dear? Who's got our valuable document?" "The parson in St. Andrews. And who's he, when he's at home?" "You little liar," said Miss Bridget coldly. "A friend of mine." "You made him up." "No, Miss Bridget, true as I live and breathe. Big fat man, all in white. Friend of mine. Cross my heart and hope to be nubbed." "And where did you meet him?" "In church." "Now I know you're lying, for you never was in a church in all your born days." "Liar and blasphemer." "Oh, how I hate a liar. Nothing's more degrading. You come here, you young person, and I'll wash your mouth out with vinegar for you. Don't think you'll escape this time." Miss Bridget, who had indeed a jar of vinegar in her hand, began to advance on Smith with her eyes glinting venomously. Smith dodged briefly behind Lord Tom and hung on to the tops of his boots. "Never came 'tween a family," chuckled the highwayman, and stepped aside, so Smith stumbled and fell. Miss Bridget came on. Smith howled and fled behind Miss Fanny, who obliged by crying, "Poor Smut," and flouncing aside to the stairs. Smith began to dart around the cellar at so great a rate that the tallow flames tore after him as if to rip loose from their seatings. "I'll teach you to lie to me," shouted Miss Bridget, making strong dives at her brother, who, between howling and roaring in his innocence, kept dragging table and stools and every movable article into her path. On the stair, cutting off all retreat, sat Miss Fanny and Lord Tom, laughing fit to burst. "Let me through," panted Smith each time he passed. "Not till you give up the document," laughed Lord Tom. "Oh, do as Lord Tom says, dear Smut," cried Miss Fanny, "before Brid smashes you stone dead, for she's that vexed." Smith shook his head and rushed on more fiercely than ever, for Miss Bridget, having the longer legs, was gaining. Round and round he scuttled and darted, now like a sooty moth, now like a quick black rat. And each time he passed the stair, he begged and implored Miss Fanny and Lord Tom to make way for his desperate, panting self. "Not till we see the document. Ha ha! Not till you give up your treasure." While from behind, Miss Bridget panted grimly, "Nothing save you this time, you degrading little liar, you." She made a last tremendous lunge, both to save herself, for she'd tripped on a stool, and to seize her brother's hair. Smith shrieked. Lord Tom laughed. "Miss Fanny!" cried, "Poor Smut!" When there was a fateful interruption, the landlord, his greasy head hung over the stair like a dirty street lamp. "Smith! Smith! Forgot to tell you something." Hastily, Miss Bridget let go of his hair and gently wiped her fingers. "What? You had callers too?" "Who, me?" "Yes, indeed. Had you off to a tea, dirty, weaselish, villainous-looking remnant. Eyes like chips of coal, teeth like the same. About 12-year-old. That's him, I says directly. Good, says they. And where is he? Nubbed, most likely, says I. Oh ho, says they. We'll be back then to inspect the remains. Then they was off. No message, just that. What was they like? One tall, t'other short, wearing brown, and though I says it myself, and I ought to know, As unsavoury and throat-slittish a pair as I've ever clapped eyes on. Ha ha! The Lord's head was hoisted out of view, and there was deep silence in the cellar. Smith shivered uncontrollably. He was desperately frightened. God knew how the two men in brown had tracked him down, but they had done so. He could not stop his teeth chattering. Even Miss Bridget looked at him compassionately. It's them, he whispered. They've come to slit me throat. Don't you worry me, lad, exclaimed Lord Tom grimly. There's no I, Toby, thief or rascal, who dare come here when he knows Lord Tom's on your side. By God, Smut, if they so much as sets foot on them stairs, I'll blow blue daylight through both of them. You've a man to protect you now, and I can't say fairer than that. No, muttered Smith, you don't know 'em. They're not your sort, Lord Tom. Why, Smut, you'll be safe with Lord Tom. There, dear, you just give him our document and all will be well. You don't understand, they'll do for me anyways. They're that sort. Then what will you do, child? Asked Miss Bridget. Much trouble, I don't know, but I can't stay here. Not now, not at night. I'll go off somewhere. Maybe to the parson at St. Andrews, smiled Lord Tom. Maybe. Don't lie now, child. It may be for the last time, and you'd go to hell. Smith looked around the cellar, which was his home, very mournfully and wretchedly. I got to go. For God's sake, let me past. Lord Tom shrugged his shoulders, but stood aside. I'd protect you, Smut. Honest, I would. The document, Smut. Won't you leave it, dear? It'll bring you no good. No, said Smith fiercely. Never, never, never. He paused as if shocked by his own determination, then added, Besides, it's with the parson at St. Andrews. Oh, Smut, sighed Miss Fanny. Brid's right and you're a liar, for you got it inside of your coat. I can see it, dear. Out of my way, shouted Smith, and with a desperate rush flew up the stairs and was gone.